So here we are. Welcome to another edition of the post-game podcast here. I'm Ryan Pigeau alongside John Lodge, and this ambitious program is all about breaking down and analyzing the past week in the sports landscape. We've got the NHL, the NBA, the major leagues, the NFL, and more. We're always poised to deliver hot takes on all of it. Today we've got a jam-packed NHL-heavy podcast for you, eh, John?
Oh yeah, lots to talk about. Lots of news that was confirmed today.
Oh yeah.
That was apparently apparently it was too much into the ether still, for people to actually talk about it. But I mean, in my opinion, when the Bob Father says something, that's the gospel. So
Yeah, we've been speculating about it all week now. When it's finally going to come down, is there going to be an official word? And this evening, that's the word that came down, right? We've got the approved third phase of the NHL's return to play plan, as well as that CBA that's going to get extended into 2026. The hub cities have been officially announced, and training camps are expected to start Monday in each city. So that's really exciting. Of course, we're going to talk that draft lottery that happened a couple weeks ago because it was super chaotic and it blew up Twitter. So we want to talk a little bit about that, and then baseball is back, right? So as of June 23rd, it was reported the players have also agreed in that league on the safety protocols that are going to ensure a return to play in late July. Um, We've got the Blue Jays signing Austin Martin to a franchise record $7 million this week, and Vladdy officially moving to first base and DH. So if you ask me, I think we got tons to talk about in just the NHL and the MLB. Hopefully we can get caught up later on in the other two big sports, but that seems a lot to get into right now, don't you think?
yeah, there's tons to break down in the two in those two sports. I mean, all that's going on in the NBA right now is the players are posting a lot of TikTok and small videos about how unhappy they are with the food at the
Ooh,
the bubble at Disney. And then there was an interesting, apparently an interesting picture of some players playing cornhole, the cornhole game
played it. I played
at
it.
Disney. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting. Apparently, because we're not going to talk much about it, but apparently the players in the NBA will have some sort of access to the rides at Disney. So
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of concern about, if there's going to be an outbreak, is it going to be amongst the players or the Disney workers? Because it's going to take a large chunk of an effort for basically an army of Disney workers to keep things going, right? So imagine getting on rides and you got all these workers that are kind of mingling amongst these NBA players. We've got a whole slew of topics to talk about. I don't even know if we're going to get into that today. So
I got
that's
this like image now, see, of like Giannis at the controls for like one of the speedy rides, and then like you got all the you got Kevin Durant and all the guys like, and they're screaming because he's cranking it too quick. It's just so it's just that's the image in my head right now, one of those caricatures.
yeah.
So I don't know.
And there's
Yeah,
there's just no Disney workers in your imagination.
that's
It's
it.
just
That's
all
it.
the
No, it's all
NBA players.
players. Like they're running rampant. They're like they're controlling the rides. That's why this is going to be a problem.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Too funny. Well, as I usually say on the radio, if you're streaming live, feel free to comment on anything you say or you see on the show. You can do that when you see us in recording as well. So the Twitter account is at Postgame Press, or myself, Respect My Takes, or John over there is at John Lodge Music. So you can always send us a comment, some sort of contribution to the show if you'd like to do that. But let's get right into the NHL. Friday's ratification of the CBA through 2026 and the NHL's return to play plan means all things kind of seem a go, right, for training camps to officially open Monday. And just to get everybody caught up to speed, after this, teams are going to travel from their home city to either the West or the East Hub on July 26th. But that means training camps are going to last about 2 weeks, followed by teams having, I think it was just one exhibition game each, and then finally starting things off in the respective hub cities on August 1st. Do you think this is going to go off without a hitch, or do you think we're going to run into some obstacles before we get to August 1st, John?
I think the longer the teams are outside of the hub cities, the more risk you have. I thought that they get them in there before. They wouldn't do this whole training camp in your home city because there are a lot of teams that are from America, Ryan,
Yeah.
and it's a problem over there. So the longer they're in that environment, the more at risk they are to contracting the virus. So, in my personal opinion, I would get them all there now and do your training camps there. There's enough ice surface you can access in Toronto, and I'm sure you can figure something out in Edmonton as well, where you do a schedule to get everyone in there. But like that's my thing is the longer they're outside of the hub cities, the less likely it is for this to be able to continue.
I can see that happening where If you could get everybody right into those hub cities right away and just start locking everybody down and quarantining and as quick as you can, trying to get to some sort of a schedule. The only thing is you got limited ice time when you've got everybody in one hub city, right? Trying to get your training camp sorted out. I don't know how many arenas they'd be able to set up as a quarantine space. So, because when the hub cities officially get going and they have the playoff qualifying round, they're really going to have one sheet of ice, right? Two sheets of ice max. They're not going to have tons of ice to be working with, and we'll talk about it later. But they're set to have up to 3 games played per day in both of those hub cities. So I don't know exactly how the logistics are going to work for the ice. Like what it's like for adults, man, like men trying to skate around ice twice in a day. I don't care how many times it's been flooded. You're going to have some rough ice by the end of the day. That's an aside, but I just think you have a good point where there's a bit of an obstacle there. You've got a lot of players within their hub city, hopefully quarantining, but when they're not quite in that bubble yet, there's always a little bit of like room for error, a little bit of opportunity for things to go wrong. So I don't think anybody's 100% like, guaranteeing things are going to happen without a hitch. I just think now that we've confirmed it all, I think there's no turning back. I believe we will see hockey in about 2 weeks.
Yeah, it just depends on if there's an outbreak, exactly how bad it is, and I think that they're in the right country to control it. I think we've seen it with the Italian soccer. For some reason, America just can't get a handle on this. I don't know if it's because they gave up too soon or if there's something else, and I'm not going to blame anything or anyone. That's not for me to say, but if you look at other countries who have handled it much better, and Canada is one of those countries, they have gotten back to sports. Go look at New Zealand. New Zealand has 60,000 people in the stands right now. Like that's the next destination for the UFC is New Zealand, because they can get fans. So I think that the NHL is in the right country in order to make sure that the season happens. But just my thing is get them to the hub cities as quick as possible, right? You brought up the CBA. And interesting point. You want to rewind, and not that everyone watching has always watched, but you want to rewind to the last time we were at Riot Radio. We were talking about, in around that time, we were talking about how excited we were for the raise in the salary cap, because of all the money that was going to come in, right?
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden it's 3 years of a flat cap, and the Toronto Maple Leafs are in trouble, right?
Oh yeah, you know it. And the thing is, I believe this is the first time since they implemented the salary cap that it hasn't even gone up a little bit, right? Like this is a new era for any GM that's kind of operating here, because you're always under the assumption your cap's going to elevate a tiny bit. It's not going to allow you to make rash decisions, but it is going to allow you to come out from under that your back against the wall, whatever it is. But 3 years, is that correct? I thought it was one, but 3 years is
No,
even
it's
more nuts.
3 years with the chance of it going up 2 million in the third year.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, they're
So
definitely in some trouble here. You've given me a little bit more information because I was, again, under the impression that next year the cap wasn't going up. But beyond that, I thought they'd be working with some different numbers. So it sounds like at least for the guaranteed next 2 years, it's
yeah.
flat. And then again, for that third year, if they, for some reason or another, are able to scrape together maybe, I don't know, $500 million from an expansion franchise, maybe the cap will rise a little bit. But
God, what a horrible time to come in as an expansion franchise. You
well,
can't get a fan base.
I had it written down in my notes. I removed it, but their nickname and everything's been delayed at least until the fall because nobody can care about franchise or expansion franchise right now, which is a
Well, you
bummer.
can't build a fan base.
No,
You can't,
exactly.
because no one can come. So as much as you might have some people, a small group of people who are excited for the team to emerge and be in the NHL, a lot of it is the rallying. Look what Marc-Andre Fleury did for the Vegas Golden
Oh
Knights, when
man,
like
yeah.
he was literally the face, that big smiling
It's a mascot.
happy. Yeah, he was their mascot for the longest time, and you can't do that with Seattle right now. So personally, I think it really stinks, and I wonder if they try to delay even the entire team's entry so that they can do this properly, so it doesn't come in as a flop.
Yeah, well, again, I hope not, because just based on the money that would be coming into the league for an expansion franchise, I believe it starts at 500 million. I can't remember if Seattle paid it up yet, or if they've committed to paying it, or what the actual deal is there. But they keep talking about the increase in salary cap and money in the league. directly in relation to the new expansion team coming in. So I'm of the belief that there is more money supposed to be getting generated in the league just solely from that. But if not, then they're going to have to rely on other things in the next 2-3 years to try to get them out from under this issue that coronavirus has kind of caused. And again, it's really, I've heard it broken down in a nice way. It's really nobody's fault. But again, when it comes down to the billionaires and the millionaires, the players versus the owners, like these owners are supposed to kind of deal with some of this heat. So unfortunately, as nobody can predict this, the talk about escrow and all that, like the players really shouldn't be having to deal with much of the burden of the business behind all this, right? They should just be having to play their sport, be getting paid. And unfortunately, for the next 3 years, those owners are going to have to kind of penny pinch in ways that they might not have had to have done in the last decade or 20 so years. Who knows?
Yeah. Okay. So I don't think that the Toronto Maple Leafs should be able to access escrow. I think that the Carolina Hurricanes should, and possibly the Winnipeg Jets, and the Arizona Coyotes, and these struggling teams. But I think teams that are owned by massive companies who are clearly not struggling for any money should ever have anything to do with the players' money. So yeah, if you want to say the players are making a lot of money and we need some back to help build the league, okay, help build the league. Let's not help the billionaires. Let's not help Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. They don't need it.
I actually.
And I mean,
agree, yeah.
it's interesting, and we're not going to talk about the NFL. I actually found something out yesterday that actually left a sour taste in my mouth. And I love the man for what he did for my team. But Tom Brady, the TB12 company, applied for a stimulus from the government for like $1 million or something. And
Interesting.
And I mean, I'm like, dude, like you're Tom F. and Brady. Like that
Hurting
money's
people.
not for you. I don't care. Like that makes me upset. Like I mean, I understand that you're applying for that so you could pay your employees, right? But you could pay your employees anyway. It's
Yeah,
$1 million. You're Tom Brady.
that seems like a bit of greed and capitalism all tied up into one, right? It's like
That seems like, oh, I can save money this way. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Interesting take. I didn't know that, and again, I'm kind of on your side there. A lot of that stuff should be going to more charitable causes.
Yeah.
Like, it shouldn't
But
even be
getting back
going
to hockey, yeah.
rich people. Yeah, getting back to
Getting
hockey. The only thing I didn't point out here was the players also have an option to kind of opt out of that restart, and that's penalty free, provided they inform teams in writing. And that's by 5 p.m. Eastern on this coming Monday. So there are going to be players like we've seen throughout leagues that are going to kind of back out of this for their own personal,
Do you think?
family reasons. You're going to have to see it. I mean, a name that's been brought up a couple of times is Max Domi or even Capo Caco, just for the sole fact that they are type 1 diabetics and they may or may not have lifestyles that they can't accommodate the risk of coronavirus right now. But other than that, it's really hard to judge.
I have a hard time believing Max Domi is going to give up a chance at the Stanley Cup. I mean,
yeah, you have a good point. It's just
I understand that it's a health risk.
Yeah.
But I think that it's a calculated risk. It's not like he's going to play on Miami Beach. He's going to a hub city in a city that has recorded less than 100 cases over the last 2 weeks per day.
Yeah, it's
right.
pretty safe.
So it's pretty safe, and it will be even safer in the bubble because there's no public access, right? So I find it hard to believe, and both those guys would be in that same bubble, Kako and Domi, right?
Right.
So I don't know. I just think that hockey's a different beast. It takes a different kind of person to play hockey.
Oh yeah, we've heard tons of people playing through injuries.
And I agree with, and I've heard it a few times on a few different stations, and I agree with them all. I just it takes a different breed to play this game, and I don't think any of them are going to opt out. Any of them. I think they're all going to show up to play, and yeah, I think we're going to have as long as there's save from some crazy setback. Yeah, I think we're going to see a full slate of players show up for the NHL. It's different. Not that the money means a lot, but the NBA is just a different league.
Yeah.
It's just different.
Well, I'm talking even MLB too. Like you saw today, Buster Posey joins David Price.
A lot of older guys though who already have their money.
Yeah.
Right. And what scares me is Freddie Freeman. And I
you
mean,
see that?
we'll say I don't know if you want to move into baseball
No,
right now, but
we'll come right back to hockey. I just wanted you to kind of tie up your point because you are making a good
Freddie
point.
Freeman has tested positive for coronavirus, and
Okay.
he's the reason why Nick Markakis, Nick made a phone call to Freddie, and that was after that phone call. It was the reason why Nick Markakis decided to opt out of the season because he realized exactly how sick Freddie Freeman was, and that is a slugger, an all-star, a top name on the Atlanta Braves, and I think that you're one more big name away from probably a flood of players not wanting to play with baseball. And baseball's different because baseball never started, right? There's no investment in it.
Yeah,
It's literally a
absolutely.
fresh slate. With hockey, 70 games played, there's that fire still. Everyone wants that trophy. Same, I mean, like basketball, I think has a lot to do with money, but and also they're playing in Florida. That's crazy, man. That's literally insane. Yeah, with getting back to baseball, I think you're Mike Trout away, and Mike Trout is about to have a baby, or his wife's about to have a baby here in a few months. So if Mike Trout has a conversation with Freddie Freeman, does Mike Trout back out? And then if Mike Trout backs out, then you're going to have a tidal wave of lesser players who now feel comfortable backing out.
Yeah, the
And
reason I brought up
yeah,
Buster Posey, man, is only because again you said like hockey's a different beast and this and that, and you're right. I think it does take a different level of athlete to kind of play through broken ribs or punctured lungs, like we've heard happen over and over, torn ACLs, this and that. Like guys in hockey are absolutely nuts. So I do think there are going to be a few, whether there are health concerns at home, that are going to look at this as they're warriors. This is their job. They're going there no matter what. If they have to take 6 weeks away from their family, so be it, right? But again, when I bring up Buster Posey, I only say that because he happily is opting out, because they're finalizing the adoption of their two young daughters who were born premature. So at the same time as like there's all these random kind of factors, your confidence alone, you've almost swayed me. You basically swayed me. I don't think there is going to be a single NHLer that's going to show that's going to opt out of this return to play. But I do think with the whole idea of snowball rolling down a hill, one league leads to another. One player has X reason, another player has Y reason. You just look around these different leagues and you see everybody does have their own personal stance. So then that's why I think with a Max Domi or a Capo Caco, guys who have already been approaching their athletic careers and their daily lives with such a more heightened sense on their health, they may have that other, voice in their head that says, like, I can't. And it's because of my future. It's because of my young family. You got lots of NHLers or Bo Horvat, for example, who just had a young child. So there's tons of different reasons. But again, your confidence alone, you've kind of swayed me. Like just based on how tough hockey players are and just the way that they approach their game, it's really unlikely to see a guy just back out for really vague reasons. But I'll tell you, if and when somebody does back out, it'll be for a very straightforward reason that we'll all understand.
yeah, it'll definitely be something that any human could
Yeah,
put them in their shoes, right? And I mean, like, especially players, by the way, that especially players that were out of the playoffs,
yeah.
right? Like the Montreal Canadiens were out of the playoffs. No way Max Domi is going to give up a chance at the Stanley Cup after being
That's
out of the playoffs.
that's where I think if I'm him,
All
I'm
right,
playing,
so
right? I just you got to
um,
make sure you do it safely and find a way. And if you got doctors or family members or people telling you in any way, like, I don't really respect your decision because you're putting us in danger or X, whatever answer it is, then there are sometimes extra, consciousnesses or consequences. Those both kind of go hand in hand. You start thinking of other people, and then it depends on where you are in your career.
I think your point about league to league, like it's snowballing. I think with the what baseball can have the biggest effect on is the National Football League,
Okay.
because like I said,
They
baseball
haven't
never got
started.
started,
Yeah.
right? And there's no stake there. There's no skin in the game. And NFL is we're getting closer and closer, right? That we were supposed to have training camp in August and games in September, and it's getting very close to that time right now, and we're still having, like, America is still struggling with the coronavirus, and there's no cure on the horizon until the early 2021.
Right.
And on top of that, there's no bubble in mention for the NFL. You could do that with the NFL too, um, but they want to run on the same plan as the MLB is planning on right now, and that's just um, going flying to each city where each team is apparently quarantining, and I just don't think that that is a viable scenario. I think that the NFL could possibly see a wave of players make that decision. Be like, listen, it's just not worth it for my family. It's just not worth it for me right now because I've got no skin in the game.
Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on that. What do you think of the draft lottery, man? It was a couple of weeks ago, but I think LA personally, I don't think they could be happier having moved up to number two. They most likely have no choice but to draft Quentin Byfield, right? We know that that's kind of the way it's going to work. We know Lafreniere's going to whoever, and that's the draft lottery system for you. We know that he's going to go to whoever is bowing out of that first qualifying round. But what do you think of LA, man? Before we get into all the craziness, one take I thought, man, a big center behind Kopitar expected to kind of one day fill in that number one center role. That's where before we get into the chaos, I'm thinking LA struck gold here, man.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, no one better for Quentin Byfield to learn under
Yeah,
than Anze Kopitar,
and this
a
Byfield
guy
is supposed to be a
who worked
big
his way
guy.
through being a like Anze Kopitar. He wasn't like a nobody prospect, but he wasn't thought to be what he is, and the number one center on a team, and a big guy, and a guy who's carried the now the Kings haven't been very good, but that's the price of winning Stanley Cups, winning multiple Stanley Cups, right? The hangover that happens for the years, sometimes decades after. Look at the Leafs. Oh my
So many
goodness.
organizations would like to be in the position that they are right now, right? But isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, it's so lucky you get 3 cups in a decade. You sort of fall apart a little bit, and here comes a number two draft pick and Quentin Byfield at number two, like a guy that's going to come in and by all accounts he's maybe not NHL ready, but by the time he'll be NHL ready, he's one of the bigger guys, an offensive, defensive two-way guy. It's again, we're going to get into the whole or not Jack, the Alexei Lafreniere stuff, but I just thought, man, LA's that's a sneaky lucky pick for that moving up to number two. And then of course Ottawa and Detroit get the short end of the stick, do they not? Like Ottawa would have been picking either fifth and sixth or fifth and seventh if it wasn't for the Carlson trade. If I'm not mistaken, the pick that Ottawa actually gets there is the San Jose pick. For some reason or another, it moved all the way up as well. Did you know that?
I didn't know exactly what pick moved up for them, but
It's not the Ottawa pick. Apparently, their earliest pick is actually the Carlson pick. Believe it or not.
I think that the biggest losers in the draft are definitely Detroit and Ottawa, but Ottawa still 2 picks in the top 5. It'll be interesting to see what they do with that. I don't see them packaging them to move up to Byfield, and I don't see anyone trading Lafreniere for just 2 picks in the top 5. It would be multiple first-round picks, and it would just be something that wouldn't happen because he's such a lock. So yeah, Ottawa and Detroit definitely. It stings to be them, and I think that it's the draft lottery almost fails, right? And I'll lead right into the craziness because, and it's I guess awesome drama wise for the NHL and headline wise that a team to be named later has the number 1 overall pick, but it's almost laughable to think that the Pittsburgh Penguins, Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Matt Murray, and the like could have Alex Lafreniere on their team if for some reason the Montreal Canadiens beat them and then they win the draft lottery. That's disgusting. I made the comparison on one of my sports lodges. Could you imagine the Leafs? They drafted Austin Matthews, number 1. Could you imagine him in the black and gold? That's that sour taste.
Yeah, gross.
Yeah.
Well, I got a couple for you here because again, I thought of if you think of this one round alone, Edmonton and Chicago meet in that qualifying round. So I can guarantee to you either the Edmonton Oilers or the Chicago Blackhawks are going to be in the running for Alexei Lafreniere. Like that's one that kind of hurt to think about because Edmonton is probably got a favor over Chicago. Like they're kind of expected to move on, but they're still a young team and Chicago's won their cups and they know how to win. So you can sit here and go, oh my God, Chicago is going to pull in LA and move even further up. You know what I mean? We just talked about how lucky LA
Chicago's
is.
in trouble.
But we just talked about how lucky LA is, right? Having won their cups and going through what you go through after having done that. Now they're going to pick Quentin Byfield. Well, in this round, it's either Edmonton getting a shot at another first overall pick. Like that makes me want to puke. Or it's Chicago in the very same scenario we just talked about LA. So that first round, I mean, the one that contrasts it the most would be kind of Toronto Columbus because I'd hate to see the Leafs get Lafreniere. I'd hate to see them run into that, lose in this first round against Columbus, and even have the idea of like, let's go after Lafreniere, because I don't want to see that happen in this market. And John, you know exactly what I'm talking about, the chaos and the craziness and the dumb people. And the other way around, I almost think if Columbus loses their first round, think about what all they've been through in the last 18 months. The ringer that they've been through, having lost their major free agents. It was Duchesne, Panarin, Bobrovsky. Like this poor team has gone through the ringer and still managed to get into this qualifying round. So the contrast there between Edmonton and Chicago, one of those two teams is going in there, and it makes you sick. And on the other end, being a Leaf fan, I wouldn't be happy. I could not be happier if Toronto moves on and Columbus gets that first overall pick. I think Lafreniere in a Blue Jackets uniform it's not talked about often. I don't think many people have even said it, but I think I like the looks of that.
I mean, I understand, but I think the best storyline is the Montreal Canadiens, isn't it? Like, I mean, everyone's talking about it, and I mean, that would be they would put statues up of Marc Bergevin for no reason. He had nothing to do with it, but he would get a statue if he was able to land Alex Lafreniere, a French Canadian all-star in the not even all-star in the making, homegrown
franchise talent.
Yeah, and okay, so like the biggest winner of the draft, right? You'd think that the biggest winner of the draft would be the team to name later, but the biggest winner is actually Lafreniere.
I think so. He's going to
before, yeah, well, that's what I was gonna say. But before he was in his mind, it was Ottawa or it was Detroit. Yep. And honestly, as I've said, both those cities kind of have a bit of an odor to them. So you can't be too excited. I mean, you're going to an NHL team, but you had a 50-50 shot of having Eugene Melnyk as your owner. Yeah, so that's not
if you didn't end up there.
Man, dodged a bullet like Neo. He should be called Alex Neo Lafreniere for dodging that Ottawa Senators bullet. And so yeah, he's definitely the winner of this one because he gets to go to a contender, man. And no matter what team gets him, it's a contender. Because they've just missed the playoffs by a couple points. That's why they're in this tournament, right? So it makes me sick that a team like Pittsburgh could have them, right? That to me is the worst case scenario.
If Lafreniere ends up on Pittsburgh, you know who you have to blame for that? Carey Price. That's it.
Yeah, because he didn't show up.
No, because
that's right, because he did show up. That's right.
But you know what I'm talking about. He's the only reason Lafreniere will end up on Pittsburgh. If that's the case, I'm okay with that because that means Carey Price is that good. But again, I don't think Pittsburgh has I don't think Montreal has a shot. I know it's a 5-game series, so like a little bit more chaos could happen, best of 3. But again, man, like if Pittsburgh ends up with Lafreniere, you can clap Carey Price for that. There's no other explanation. I just think it's kind of cool. You did point it out. Like I'm trying to avoid it because it is the sexiest pick, but could you imagine, right? A homegrown talent, they lose to Pittsburgh. They weren't even supposed to be in the playoffs, but they lose to Pittsburgh and they're given that kind of that lottery ball. That would be kind of cool for a Montreal Canadiens fan. I hate to kind of say it. It makes me sick coming out of my mouth, but it's Columbus is my number 2 pick behind that.
Man, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Draft lottery is broken and there's one way to fix it. And it's a tournament, man. It's a tournament. These non-playoff teams are looking for revenue. Hockey markets are always around and always wanting their team to make the playoffs. And who cares if a bingo ball falls in your favor? How about we do a round robin tournament like we're doing right now? This little best of 5 tournament could be a pilot project for something for the draft lottery. Get rid of the draft lottery, take every team that didn't make the playoffs and put them in this tournament to compete for the number 1 overall pick.
It's almost something you could see going in the future. I mean, again, the chaos, there are people that just can't stand it. And
as you drop out, that's your pick.
Honestly,
right? Like
it could kind of make sense. There are some people who don't like that as kind of I prefer a little bit of chaos, not tons. Like, again, I don't like the idea that Edmonton maybe might get this first overall pick again because they've had enough. I feel like there should be a limit on that in a decade. But again,
you just don't want to see Connor McDavid and Alex Lafreniere on the same line.
Well, they already have Draisaitl and McDavid. The poor team won't be able to pay them. It's the same conversation of teams that get punished for drafting well all over
Like
the
the
place,
Leafs.
like the Leafs. Yeah, like
Yeah,
they
if the
just
Leafs got him, they just wouldn't be able to pay him, right? So
that's
that's
again that's the business conversation. The market going overreacting about getting another first overall pick. I don't want to go through that, but then the actual business of the contract, it's like, oh my god, now we actually have to trade Nylander. Oh, the market's gonna go nuts. Oh my god. Anyway, so
yeah,
I
that's
think
exactly it.
that's it for the NHL, man. I think we'll keep up to date in the next week. Now that training camps are set to start, I'm sure we're gonna have lots of video, lots of news coming out. I guess it's your wager against mine. If we have players that opt out, I'm gonna finally maybe win something in life if I can beat you at that. But we'll keep an eye on it, right? Obviously, I think that's all we can talk about the NHL for now until August 1st when things really kick off.
Yeah, that's. I mean, there isn't much left to talk about until teams report. Oh, you know what? Actually, there is one more thing that has piqued my interest.
Ooh,
There's been no news on Austin Matthews. Where's Austin Matthews? No sighting, no talk, no nothing.
is that a good thing or a bad thing? I want to say good, but do you have an opposite take?
I mean, I don't know. I'm worried because we haven't heard anything since he tested positive. And like I said, Freddie Freeman, right? Austin Matthews is young, but so is Freddie Freeman. It really depends on how this virus attacks you. So
Yeah.
I want to hear how our number one overall pick is doing. I think that the market deserves that, and I think that if we haven't heard by August 1st, the questions are going to become deafening.
Okay, well, I'll write that down. Let's keep an eye on Matthews news too, just to keep John's anxiety at a okay level. Because I wasn't even thinking about it, but now that you bring it up, it's a good point. If we don't hear anything, maybe that's not good news. But I'm staying positive. Fingers crossed for our, as you said, our franchise first line center. But other training camps are basically starting up. It's been a week, and the Blue Jays are. Some of the Blue Jays are in the Rogers Center. I guess I heard a little report earlier in the week that there was upwards of 10 or 12 players and staff members that tested positive and then therefore had to be quarantined, stayed in Dunedin. But for the most part, Blue Jays have started their training camp just like every other team in the MLB. We got news a couple weeks ago that 60 regular season games starting July 23rd or 24th is going to be the case, and a trade deadline will happen around August 31st. So again, just to get everybody caught up to speed, players agreed to health and safety protocols, and after all those negotiations and both sides looking silly, baseball finally came out with a schedule. And John, my take was they kind of had more of a bush league approach once again when they didn't really seem to like, and they still don't seem to have these hub cities or these cities where they're going to play figured out. Matter of fact, if you think of Toronto, for training camp alone, the Blue Jays have been granted they've waived the 14-day quarantine, right? The federal law.
No, they didn't.
Well, however it's worked, they're allowed to.
They have to. They are stuck at the Rogers Center.
That's the thing. It's basically they've got the some exceptions, right? Like they're quarantined inside the hotel at the
Yeah,
Rogers.
at the Marriott. Yeah.
So they've still, I believe, like they've had some sort of that law waived for them to be able to pass over the border.
Well, they were able to. Yeah, they were able to come home without quarantining for 14 days in the States.
There you go. That's it.
Or
That's
not
it.
come home, but like come to Toronto. But I mean, I was just going to say before we get into the meat and potatoes of what's
Sure.
what's happening in the season, and to steal from Tim and Sid, cut or uncut, them not being allowed to leave the facility at all
Well,
for
yeah,
the season.
it's been a big debate. Did you see Travis Shaw?
Yeah, and I mean, I voiced my opinion on Twitter recently, and I'm with Travis Shaw on this. I mean, like if I can do it, right, and you can do it, if he's quarantined for 14 days and they have a negative test, if they've left the States or left Canada and come back, right? If they have a negative test when they come back for 2 straight days, then yeah, they should be able to, mask up, go for a walk, live in your condo. There's no reason they should be confined. Man, I can't stand the Rogers Center for 3 hours. Could you imagine being locked in there?
I hear you there, and I appreciate the take. I just think if they're doing everything we're doing, whenever we fly over the border, like across the border and home, we are supposed to quarantine for 14 days. That's the law. That's part of the law. So that's what I think is being
that would be the part that was waived for them,
so
right? So long as they test negative.
So I believe throughout the season, though, like or throughout training camp, like if they are at any point in time leaving and coming back, like it's like they're essentially being granted something that we are not, right? Like
Yeah, well, they're not allowed to leave during training camp now. They're not. Like they have to stay in the Rogers Center.
So I'm just trying to see both
As
sides
we
of
know
it.
right now, the Rogers Center and the Marriott for their at least the remainder of their camp, and then they fly to Boston in the late part of the month to have a I think it was a 20 something 21st or something to have a couple exhibition games.
Yep, the only
And
two preseason games. You
yeah,
said it, July 21st and 22nd, and then the season starts on the 24th in Tampa Bay.
yeah. So my thing is if they're playing in the States, right? So if this is to happen, um, they have to play all their away games, right? Like the Blue Jays are crossing the border, so they can't cross the border 5 times in a month, right? They can't cross the border 5 times in 3 months. They have to play 20 games, city, right? And then come home and play 20 games,
Right. And is that
right?
how the schedule is laid? I'm pretty sure that's how
I
the schedule is
I
laid out.
don't know. I haven't looked at it. I haven't done a deep dive into the schedule, but personally, that's the only way I can see it working. They would have to spend like a month chunk on the road
Okay.
just to make it work, because I don't see them being allowed to, 1 week away and then 1 week back and then
See,
1 week away and then 1 week back, because then you're bringing like I think it would almost be easier if you're bringing all the teams in, like you can tell the government of Canada, okay, so now we're home for a month, so you can expect this guy, this guy, this team, right? And
well, this is what I was going to add here too. Is it's basically just before we got into again more of that stuff. Is the teams are actually still unsure if they're going to get that same approval, like the Jays organization, for the scheduled home games in the
yeah,
upcoming
they might have to do it
season.
in
So
Florida or in Buffalo.
so that's kind of an answer to your solution to eliminate Canada out of it altogether. If they're not able to play their home games after this training camp, like this 2 week training camp here, which has only begun 6 days ago, 7 days ago, if they're not able to play their actual in-game season games at home, then we won't see any baseball in Canada this year, and it's fine because no fans can go anyway. But that's the thing, is I was trying to almost tie those two in together. The government granted the club some sort of approval, which I'm not clear of anymore, to waive that 14-day quarantine rule. But again, the team is just unsure if, like, when the season starts, they're even going to be granted that same approval to waive that same quarantine each and every time. So it's almost an answer to your question, whether they'll be flying back and forth and they're going to have to receive that approval from the government each and every time, or if the schedule is going to dictate X or Y, or if they're just going to have to relocate all of their games to the spring training site in Dunedin. That's the most likely alternative venue for those games, is just having
I would, I mean,
everything happen in Dunedin. But again, the conversation about Florida is a roller coaster every day. So
yeah, I was just going to say, it could, if you had the choice between Buffalo and Florida, I'm taking Buffalo. I'm sorry. I know that there's not a lot to do, but you're not supposed to be doing a lot anyway, right? So
yeah, you
you
can't
can
use
get
that excuse today.
you can get good food in Buffalo, and you can stay in a nice hotel, and I think that would be the best possible situation. If I was thinking for the Blue Jays personally, I wouldn't want to be going to Florida at all.
Now let's start thinking about the Blue Jays, because I think we got the whole the MLB stuff figured out. It's a tricky kind of situation. We don't know where the Jays are going to play, but when it comes down to the actual Jays players, we got news that surrounds two of them.
Big
Yeah,
news today.
one of them's Vladdy. You want to talk about that stuff right now? The new information about his positioning. Sounds like he's going to get moved to first or DH for the entire 2020 season.
Strange story, right? They said
Yeah,
that Vladdy went to them
yeah.
and said, let's do this. I want to go to first, right? And I don't know if that's the entire truth, or if it was it's not working at third, let's get you over to a position where it does work better for you. And not that Vladdy wasn't decent at third base, but and the comparison I heard today, and it was great, it was like, we just went from Josh Donaldson, MVP, Gold Glove, outstanding defensive skills at third base, to Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and it just did not add up. It did not, like, the water level was not carried there by Vladdy. I could clock multiple times where Vlad went after balls that he shouldn't have gone after, and one specifically sticks out in my mind from early in the season when Bo Bichette first came up, a couple games into
Was a
Bo
ball in
Bichette's
foul
career.
territory.
No, it wasn't in foul territory. It was a ball in the gap, in the shortstop gap, and Vlad had just committed an error on the play previous, and he jumped Bo's path. and he attacked the ball,
It was
and he
a
ended up
very
making the
almost.
play,
Yeah.
but it was like, dude, you shouldn't have done that, and you kind of tried to make up for something, and you could have caused an injury to another player, right? So personally, if the less he has to think out there, and then focus on hitting the ball, tear the cover off of it. That's what you're going to be
That's
special
something
at.
you've been saying since
And
day one,
that's
it seems.
nothing to be upset about, that you're not going to be the defensive wizard of Major League Baseball. That's just not what you were built for. Your dad was Vladimir Guerrero. He tore the cover off the ball no matter where it was thrown. So now it's your job to be Vladimir Guerrero Jr. You tear the cover off the ball, you just hit it a little bit better than your dad. You have a little bit more of a tighter strike zone than your father had, right? So yeah, I just think that the move to first base is really good for Vlad, and it's really bad for Rowdy Tellez.
It's funny. Well, Travis Shaw was playing a little bit of first base too, and apparently he's going to be moving over to third. But it sounds like even Austin Martin might have a chance to come in. He's been added to the 60-man roster, so we'll talk about him in a second. But I think personally, I want to call a spade a spade. I don't think Vladdy was a very good defensive player whatsoever. Like there might have been some flashes, but I think if you're in the major leagues, like there's always going to be a flash or two. I didn't think he was a good defensive player, and I think you need the guys, like you said, we just came from Josh Donaldson on third. And who was on third before him? Was it not Brett Laurie?
I want to say
Was he a
Brett
shortstop or a third?
Laurie.
Either way, we're used to guys on third actually like going out of there, like didn't
Scott
have the
Rowland.
body.
Scott Rowland played third for the Blue Jays.
Okay. But even still, Vladdy just didn't suit. He just didn't have the build. He just doesn't, as much as he wants to go out there and try hard, he supposedly spent his offseason training to rework his physique. And again, nothing is a shot on Vladdy, but like we've heard that each and every offseason. It's just the type of the build that he is. Apparently, he's trying to build up his endurance and improve his flexibility and agility. But we've all been calling this since day one, right? That he's going to be a first base DH. He's going to be kind of like that. Is it Melky Cabrera did the kind of similar thing?
You know what? You know the guy I compared him to today was Prince Fielder.
Prince Fielder, except Prince was even
Like,
beefier, no?
well, yeah, but it wasn't fat. It wasn't fat with Prince. Believe it or not, it was all muscle. It was just the way he was built, right? He
It's
was
funny
just
because
a
he was a second generation
yeah.
MLBer as well. It's
He's
funny
just
how
a
you
big
compare him to
boy,
that.
right? And everyone always got on Prince about his weight, and everyone was like, "Oh, Prince eats all this." He's vegan. The dude is not fat.
Yeah,
He's like, now I can't speak for his eating habits now that he hasn't played for years, and he's had the neck fusion and whatnot. But when he was playing, he was not fat, and it was just his body type. And so I made the comparison to Prince Fielder today, and that's what he really reminds me of, because Prince moved to first and he was really good, and like Prince was the reason why Lyle Overbay had got traded to the Blue Jays.
That's a name I haven't heard in a long time. Lyle Overbay.
Yeah, Lyle Overpay. Yeah.
Overbay. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Well, that's right there for
That
you.
was
I think that
was
was
a
easy.
no, that was a great chant, dude. That was a great chant in those times at the Rogers Center, or was it called the Rogers Center? Yeah, it was the Rogers Center then. Yeah, good times. But yeah, Prince Fielders was who drove Overbay off of, I believe, the Pirates, and no, it was the Brewers. Either way, he's a good comparison for Vlad. He's a guy who tore the cover off the ball and played really good first base. And I think Vlad can aspire to be that level and be better. Like be the best hitter that MLB's seen. Right.
Solid
And
comparison.
that he may not hit the most home runs anyone's ever seen, but that's not who Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was touted as. People think that because of his size, but he was touted as the best hitter, pure hitter. So that means singles, doubles, never a triple, obviously, but singles, doubles, and homers. So it'll be interesting to see what he can do at first base when he doesn't have to worry about thinking about the defense.
We got another pure hitter and a guy that doesn't necessarily hit the long ball, but a 21-year-old that's kind of officially signed a pro deal, a franchise record pro deal. Do you want to talk a little bit about Austin Martin before we get out of here, man? I think there's some excitement in the market here because nobody knows quite where he's going to play. Seems like he's played 50 different positions, right, in his 2 years at Vanderbilt. But Austin Martin's a Blue Jay. He's going to be in the 60-player pool, and the conversation is starting to arise. Like, we got a huge hitter here, and when are we going to use him? Where's he going to go?
So $7 million, and it was starting to get a little sweaty, right, in Blue Jays Nation. We weren't wondering, we weren't wondering what was happening, or we were wondering, sorry, what was happening with the contract. I hadn't heard anything. And when the likes of Torkelson had already signed and other guys were signing, and he was still out there, and I was like, oh, come on, don't lose this guy, right? And so they didn't lose him. They signed him $7 million, and I don't know if we see him this year. I think that it takes injuries and possible COVID-related situations in order to see Austin Martin at third base this year, because you've got Travis Shaw, you got Brandon Drury.
You got enough guys.
You got enough guys that are ahead of him right now, but you've also got Josh Groshans as well. So it's really interesting. My take on Austin Martin is the Toronto Blue Jays next year could be, now they could compete this year, right? Because it's such a short season, right? Anything could happen, right? They were saying a 5-game winning streak is akin to a 12-game winning streak.
Yep.
So and anything could happen in this season, but leading into the future, it's exciting. It's remember we were always talking about the Boston Red Sox and how they built teams, and how the New York Yankees have their team, and it was just it aspired to be able to build through the farm, and the Blue Jays just were never able to do that. And now you can look, you've got Bo Bichette, and you've got Kevin Pigeau, you've got Vladimir Guerrero Jr., you've got now Austin Martin,
all over the positions.
Lourdes Gurriel Jr. in the outfield, Nate Pearson, Alek Manoah, Simeon Woods Richardson, and the list goes on. And it seems like the Blue Jays are ready to compete with their young homegrown talent. And it might be time, we've talked about it before, for them to go out and spend the big dollars to bring a couple of those big name free agents in, and greasing the wheels with Boris Corp at the $7 million record contract. That's probably going to help.
It's funny you tie it all in, because I was going to say, by all accounts, what I heard today is what the Jays did to actually get this deal and this bonus done. It's the most that they could have spent without actually having to give whatever the rules are, draft picks and that. But they actually did something that I didn't think the Jays were capable of, and they spent money. They went out of their way to spend a ton of money, and I'm like, oh my goodness. It's what John and I have been talking about the whole time. Like, they know that they do need to spend money eventually. They do need to do it in the right spots. And this is nothing huge, but to me, I thought, okay, at least I can draw a silver lining and go, what I'm being told is they spent everything they could up to the last cent to make sure they could get all their young prospects signed from this draft. There was 2 of them that they got, right? Or 2, I think they got them all signed, but 2 big names, right? And in the end,
CJ Van Eyck, I believe, was the other one.
Thank you. So I'm sitting here thinking, oh my goodness, they're actually willing to spend money when it calls for it. Like you said, thank goodness they didn't lose Austin Martin, but it gets the wheels turning in my head even further. You compare them to some of these other teams that have had their homegrown outfield and infield, I guess, just their defensive positions, but they've gone ahead and spent money on the arms, and we're really close. You're tying it all nice into a nice tight bow. We've hit that point where, yeah, we still have to wait. Like, the organization is still developing, but the amount of names that you can put in each position, like, we're not lacking too much here, and a little bit of dough might actually get this team over the line if we're willing to go out in free agency and spend on the right guys that are going to be veteran presences or aces, whatever it is. Like, they might have the money and the wherewithal to do it now with the prospect pool like they have. I'm so excited.
Well, with the team that they have now, what big name free agent would turn down coming here? I mean,
yes,
you've got the power of a lot of talent, and I didn't even bring up Ryu. Could you imagine if in 2 years Ryu's your 3rd best pitcher, and you've signed an ace, and you've got Nate Pearson in there and someone else behind him, and then Alek Manoah is your closer, or possibly an ace as well. We don't know what Manoah is going to turn into, but it's just, the possibilities of contention are endless. I mean, I look, see, it's interesting. I tied it to the Yankees and to the Red Sox, but like, the Blue Jays don't have a Giancarlo Stanton. And by that, I mean, they don't have a boat anchor in Giancarlo Stanton on their team anymore.
An older guy, a guy that's
who's
kind of
not
one-dimensional. I hear you. There is.
He hasn't played for a year and a half.
There's no.
He hasn't played for a year and a half, man.
Organization.
So Stanton, they're saying, oh, Stanton might be ready to play DH by the time this is ready to go. And they were talking about him being maybe ready to play DH last season. And it's just like he hasn't been able to get going, and he's been being paid a boatload of money. So the Blue Jays don't have that, right? And that's what they have to avoid, because I think that could cause an issue for the Yankees.
Yeah, I agree. I think, again, the Jays are just in a nice little spot where you can't pick out a contract that's really, like, hurting them. And it's look at the Toronto sports market lately. Like I grew up in an era where like all we did have was guys making too much money that are bums, and now I can't even think of one in the entire
Yeah.
Toronto market. Pick one in any of the three teams: Raptors, Jays, Leafs. I don't even think of one guy making too much money that's a bum. There's no Phaneuf, there's no Clarkson, there's no. They just go on and on. Those are just two hockey guys, but it's crazy. And again, having a sports radio show, you think like it's the words are coming out of my mouth, and I'm like, am I talking about a Toronto team? Like it's weird. It's really awesome. It's exciting, but I mean, you just have to sit and wait. Think back 3 years when we're sitting here going, oh my god, like what are they going to do? Bring out Vladdy on a shit team? Like there's nothing to talk about, and it feels like the sports landscape really can turn on a dime. You look at teams like the Atlanta Braves, how quickly their young guys developed, and the Jays are right behind them.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, it's just like how long has it been that Boston has been the city of champions? It seems like Toronto is ready to explode, right? And I'm not calling for it. Like we've already got one major champion, and I think the Raptors, by the way, have a really good shot at repeating in this tournament if it ever happens, if it ever gets going. I think they've got an excellent shot because they have a very close knit team that isn't reliant on aging, too many aging stars. You got Gasol and you've got Lowry, right? But you've got a good young close knit team, and they just came off the championship win. Right, they're in that mindset. They're still the champs. It's funny because Tim and Sid were talking today, or not Tim and Sid, but on Tim and Sid. They were talking today. It was like, what would the one thing you would bring to the NBA bubble? And someone messaged in and said, I know what the Raptors brought. Delario B.
Delario B.
So yeah, I mean, like I think that the Raptors have a really good shot at repeating as well. So I think that the Toronto sports landscape, like you said, could flip on a dime. It could be it could be the next city of champions. And the Toronto sports media, here they go again, talking about how Toronto could be the greatest place in the world. Blah blah blah. Toronto, yeah. Well, take a look at the teams.
You just did a very close Homer Simpson. That was starting to that was weird. That was starting to creep me out there. Holy smokes. I don't even know if that's what you're going for. Real hint of Homer Simpson. And if anybody doesn't believe me, go back now and listen to that 15, 20 seconds ago and tell me you don't hear Homer Simpson a little bit.
No, I was not going for Homer. I was just going for cocky ass hat.
Well, it was great. It was great, man. It's 10 to 11. I think we did most of our NHL and MLB talk, but we'll have to get together and discuss a little bit more of the NBA once it gets a little bit closer towards playing time. And the NFL, obviously, we get more news down the road. We're going to have to talk about next time we get together. I'll get your take on obviously the big pickup quarterback on your team and Pat Mahomes' contract. There's tons of things to talk about. So we'll save it for another time because it's getting late. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we take off?
UFC 251 happening this Saturday. Massive card, Fight Island. You got Street Jesus versus the Nigerian Nightmare. And I can't wait for it. It's the fight everyone wants to see. And yeah, it'll be excellent. So check it out and have a glass of proper 12 while you're at it.
Proper 12. My proper 12. Give me proper 12. All right, buddy. Well, you have a good rest of your night, and we'll talk soon. Take care, and hopefully we have some more news to talk about in the coming weeks.
All right, buddy.
All right,
peace.
Have a good rest of your night. Take care.
Later.